with the government. That's not a government issue.
I want to get back to that, but we'll just let Tanya
there's an incredibly inconsistent position that Helen's taken. She says that we were too loud on human rights, then we were too quiet on Stern Hugh, and now she's saying that the problem with Rabia Kadir has obviously, set a touch paper to this issue. Would a Liberal government have granted a visa to Rabia Kadir?
Well, what I think we really have to look at here is that there have been a number of very consistent and confused messages sent to the Chinese, where clearly, as a very different type of government, a different regime, you obviously have to handle these matters much more sensitively.
It is a worthy question, though.
As a matter of diplomatic handling, you need to be much more attuned and much more sensitive to the sorts of issues. Now, I'm not going to be talking about visas because we're not the government, but clearly what you have to do is work through the issues. Obviously, you have to understand some of the concerns that the Chinese raised about Rabia Kadir. Now, some of them may have been legitimate, some of them may not. I wasn't a party, and neither was our party or our shadow minister to discussions about that. But you have to have a consistent position in relation to dealing with a very sensitive set of circumstances, such as represented by the Chinese government.
Actually, Helen won't say whether her party, if they'd been in government, would have ignored Australian law and prevented this visa being issued, nor will she say whether her party, if in government, would have raised human rights issues with China. We know from the history of the previous Howard government...
We've got a dialogue in which to do it.
So you're criticising the Prime Minister... So you're criticising the Prime Minister of Australia for raising the human rights issues that you say that you also care about. I mean, it's a very inconsistent message.
It's the way you do it and where you did it and how you did it.
Well, yesterday there was obviously some good news. We saw that the Gorwin project had been signed off in Beijing, $50 billion worth of LNG to be bought by China over the next couple of decades. Tanya Plibersek, yesterday the government was talking like this is a done deal, but this whole project hasn't even passed environmental assessments yet, has it?
It does need to have environmental assessments. We are very hopeful that it will pass through those environmental assessments.
Really say, no, I'm not going to pass this after such a...
He will, as a responsible minister, use the legislation that is his responsibility to make an objective decision about this. But it is a huge potential benefit for the state of Western Australia. We've been very happy to work cooperatively with the Western Australian government. It's something that will provide 6,000 jobs at the peak of construction. It means an awful lot for us in terms of exports over coming years. It was really curious yesterday to see Western Australia's Liberals walking out of the Parliament. They were so happy to hear about this great deal for Western Australia that they did a walkout.
Well, I do want to ask the Senator about this. Malcolm Turnbull didn't look very happy at all when in question time we saw this, decamping of WA MPs from the chamber because they were worried the government was taking too much credit for this deal. Is this just another example of Malcolm Turnbull not being able to control the troops?
I think it's an example of a whole lot of people who care deeply about how resources are treated, and particularly West Australians, showing a bit of passion over the insufferable smugness of the Rudd Labor government, trying to claim credit for something that they hadn't achieved, hadn't done, because it was obviously a commercial negotiation, and it was, I think, just the last straw for some of those backbenchers who care deeply about their state, and at how the government was trying to ramp up some undeserved credit for a deal that has clearly been struck on a commercial basis. In fact, I think Mr. Ferguson, Laurie Ferguson, in fact, said the government didn't have anything to do with it. So, really, I think it was just one of the, a low point for them in how they were looking at, as I say, the insufferable smugness of the Rudd Labor government.
A day that was seen as a very high point, though, for Australia's economy.
And indeed, Ashley, that's what we were saying. We were saying this is great news for Australia.
And
we were talking
that.
And well, actually, not in the Parliament yesterday. You didn't, Helen.
And we have.
Thank you. It would have been nice to hear that in the Parliament yesterday. We were saying that it was terrific that we were able to work so closely and cooperatively with the Liberal government of Western Australia. We were certainly giving credit there. And we were saying it's great news for those Australians who get a job through this project. It's great news for export earnings for Australia. And indeed, it's great news for our relationship with China.
Well, Malcolm Turnbull's also had a bit of problems keeping the Nationals in line. Today there's some reports with speculation that the Nationals are considering splitting off from the Liberals. Do you see that ever happening, Senator?
Well, certainly not from conversations I've had with my National friends and colleagues. I've worked closely over many years with the Nationals. Now, that doesn't mean to say that there can't be well-articulated and differentiated points of view. The whole wheat legislation was a good example where if you work through it, you can actually differentiate your position but still agree on the major issues. I can absolutely assure you, Ashley, that the Nationals and the Liberals are absolutely at one at being aghast at Labor's reckless spending that's going to mean that every Australian is going to pay more in taxes and higher interest rates. We are absolutely at one.
How about climate change?
Examining the issue of climate change after the break, so stay with us. We'll be back with you in just a couple of minutes.